Alright, so let's talk about the sacred order of survival and survival context, right? And if you go to my website, the Urban-Aboriginal.com, and you click on articles, you can pull up this article, you can print it off yourself. There's some visuals there. And the way I was taught through the Tom Brown practice school, Tom Brown Jr., rest in peace, is there's a sacred order of survival. And what we were taught was shelter, fire, water, more or less in that order. That triad shifts, right? Based on the situation and the circumstance or the environment that you're in. Shelter, fire, water. That's what we were taught. And many of us, well, those people that have followed Tom Brown Jr., that is what we're taught, shelter, fire, water. And there is another sacred order adjacent to, which is shelter, fire, water, food. However, we can survive, human beings can survive a lot longer without food than the other three. So when we're talking about survival, we're talking about true survival, living, right? Making it, right? Until we can get some substance, meaning food. And I would add a fifth element: shelter, fire, water, food, cordage, rope. Because as human beings, we're able to make things. And that helps us get food via traps, nets, make shelter, so on and so forth, right? So, yet we can go back to what I was trained in. This is the core basics: shelter, fire, water. Those three. Because in review, we talk about 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, and in very inclement circumstances, 3 days without water, right? 3 days. If you don't have any water to drink, potable water by the seashore, and you definitely cannot drink seawater. I've been to the ocean. You don't want to drink it. It's not good unless you're able to distill it. That's a whole other conversation. 3 weeks without food. So we can survive longer without food than we can without water. And then it goes on to, as I talked before, 3 months without love, human interaction, if you will, or other animal interaction, if you will. And then 3 seconds without hope, or less. 3 seconds or less without hope, right? So, the elements of survival, sacred order. And the way I was taught is shelter, fire, water. Shelter will keep you away from the elements, give you an opportunity to rest, gain strength. Fire helps you make tools. It also, if you know what you're doing, will help you make potable or drinkable water. Especially if you live by the seaside, because now you can distill your water. Okay? You can take the sea salty water into something that's non-salty and drink it, or disinfect it. Even if it's lake water. Some lake water is not, or standing still water can be not so good. Right? And again, it's the triad that can be shifted based on the circumstances at hand or the necessities at hand. So the elements of survival is very important to understand. to, as far as, what do you bring when you go camping? What do you bring when you go on a day trip or a day hike, or you're traveling someplace else? You have to think of these things. And where am I going to get my shelter? Right? Most of us have cars. Some of us will bring a tent, etc., etc. Where am I going to get my fire? Fire could mean also electricity. So think outside the box, or think adjacently towards these things, right? Where am I going to get my energy? Fire. How am I going to power my quote-unquote cell phone, my phone, or whatever? Water, right? How am I going to drink? Because we're not going to live too long without drinking water. You die of thirst real quick, much more so than you would without food. Yes, you will feel hungry. But in our Western society, and I live in the United States, many of us have a few pounds we can lose, right? So we'll feed off that fat before we keel over and die of hunger. However, water is an absolute necessity, period. So where are you going to get that water? So, again, elements of survival. These are things to keep in mind. These are the basics. These are the ABCs of survival. It's unfortunate that they're not teaching this in school. It's unfortunate that one has to be a part of the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or whatever, and have to pay money to be a part of those sorts of organizations to even learn or be aware of such things. These are the ABCs, right? Those of you that are homeschooling, cool. Again, theurbanable.com. You can download this article. Please print it out. You can study it. I go into a little bit more in depth about such things, and I think it's important. I think it's very important to be able to understand how we would, what makes us human, what keeps us going, and especially in a survival situation.